Hey, I'm Sheena Shuey. I'm a registered social worker and host of the 4Q podcast. I'm passionate about normalising, not pathologising life, and that's not easy. So each episode, I have amazing guests on to share the messy, beautiful ups and downs of life in 4 key questions with tips and tricks along the way. There are moments in life where you can embrace your story and understand that it's okay not to feel okay sometimes. So let's get into it. This is the 4Q podcast. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the 4Q podcast. My name is Sheena Shuey, and today we're going to be talking about the pain paradox, or it's acceptance around seasons of life. Now, to give a little bit of context to this whole conversation and this whole situation, this week on my Instagram stories, I was sharing a situation I had with a client who I work with in my other workplace and not Savasana Collective or Shavasana Collective, where she was in a difficult place because she had gone through an experience where she felt that she was meant to feel happy. She wasn't meant to feel angry or sad or anything. Like, she should just be so grateful that she went through this experience because she had some health concerns and she had a health procedure that really helped her. And she was really anxious, really out of sorts, and she couldn't quite understand that by pushing her emotions down or not acknowledging more than one emotion at a time, she was actually making things worse for herself. So what we know about pain, what we know about emotions is that it's kind of like that, for Australians listening, it's that, do you remember that nursery rhyme or that book where you can't go under it? You can't go over it, you have to go through it. That's the same with emotions and pain. Is whatever the emotion, whatever the painful memory or experience, if we don't find the time to sit with it and process it, it'll come back bigger and worse, and it'll just keep popping up, right? So we actually have to feel it to heal it, as we say. So for her, she had trouble seeing that there are shades of grey and that an experience can leave you happy, can leave you grateful, but it can also leave you feeling angry or feeling sad. And another thing that this particular person was struggling with, which I've seen so much in social media recently because, globally, there's some really horrific things going on in other countries, in the developing world. For those of us who are in first world countries, we are very blessed. And so there's this feeling of, I can't feel sad, or I can't feel angry, or I can't feel, whatever the emotion is, because people have it worse than me, or people are going through such horrific things and my life is so beautiful. And the reality is that you can have perfect parents, a perfect job, perfect husband, eat right, sleep right, exercise, live in a beautiful country, have all the things you could ever dream for, and still feel sad, still feel anger. It's okay to feel overwhelmed or lost sometimes. There's a lot of big things going on in the world, and that's okay. We all go through hard seasons in life, hard seasons, hard emotions, and so we all have to process that. And the analogy I used the other day on Instagram as well is around, if I chopped my finger off and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go to the hospital with my finger, and then I rock up to the hospital and there's someone with a chopped leg off. Do I just turn around and go, oh, you know what? I don't have it as bad as that person, so I'm just gonna leave because I don't have it that bad. No, of course not. We can acknowledge that people are going through some horrific things in the world, but we still have to go through our own journey of processing our stuff. And that's okay. It's not, you don't have to feel guilty about that, or that you're some entitled or privileged person, It's okay to articulate your needs even though others are suffering, right? Like, I think that's really important because, again, when we push things down and pretend they don't exist, another analogy, because, I love a good analogy. Another analogy that I use is around, if I have a sprained ankle and I don't see anyone about it, I don't go to physio, I just kind of go, oh, look, it's not broken, it's just a sprained ankle, I'm just going to keep going. And then eventually, because I haven't acknowledged that sprained ankle, I might be running and then I roll my ankle and I actually break it. And then I kind of go, oh, the break's healed. I don't need to physio it. I don't need to be careful with it. It's not that bad. It was just a minor fracture. And then I majorly fracture it because I push myself. That's a lot like not acknowledging emotional or psychological pain. It's really important we acknowledge it, because otherwise it keeps coming up. It keeps getting bigger and bigger because it keeps getting worse. And this is why so many people we see have, midlife crisis, or these emotional and psychological breakdowns that happen, that they end up so overwhelmed with emotions and thoughts because they've been ignoring them for years, and that can happen with physical health too. I'll often see someone who maybe has been forced to be bedridden. Again, maybe they actually had a physical injury, broke their leg, broke their ankle, something along those lines, and then they've been forced to stay in bed. And during that time, or being at home alone, or even with this, the pandemic and being at home all this time, you actually stop and have to acknowledge all the things that you've been ignoring by keeping busy, all the things that you've been pushing down because you just have to get on with it. You just have to get on with working or taking care of the kids or whatever the thing is. So again, I really encourage people to just counseling, psychology, whatever the thing is, journaling, having some sort of practice where you're working with a coach, or you're working with a professional, or you're working on yourself to let these little bits go is really important. It's like letting a little bit of pressure out slowly every single day over time, so that you don't end up having an explosion under that pressure. So coming back to this pain paradox and the shades of grey, I guess something that I was talking to the original client about was around what research shows us is that people who accept that pain and sometimes difficulty, sometimes suffering, people who have the mindset of that's just part of life, we all experience that. We all have seasons of good and bad. So people who actually anticipate that life isn't going to be rosy and actually realize, embrace pain, are actually have far less pain. So that, if they go through a bit of a rough patch, whether it's financially, psychologically, socially, emotionally, all of it, sometimes when it rains, it pours, and it's this domino effect of one area is not going so great and everything feels like it's falling apart. But people who have a mindset of that's part of life, or it's just a hard season, sort of that narrative of it's not forever and this is part of life, actually experience pain, the pain of that, for less amounts of time and at less intensity, compared to people who don't acknowledge that pain is part of life, or that think that everything can be worked out or thought out or felt out or whatever. So it's sort of acknowledging that, we have, just like in nature, seasons that are harder than others and easier than others, seasons that things just flow and everything works swimmingly, and seasons where it's a bit harder. And so with the pain paradox, if you can accept that there's going to be hardship and pain in life sometimes, it actually won't affect you as much, so not as intense and not as long as if you don't accept that part of life. So I really challenge you to think about that. And think about, what's your narratives? What's your ideas around how life is supposed to be? And where did you get that? I think sometimes I am a practitioner who practices the law of attraction and manifestation and visualization, as a lot of you know. And I think sometimes in some of those circles around the law of attraction, not all of them, but some of them, that there's this idea around, if we lean into pain or if we acknowledge negative thoughts, that we're actually going to manifest them. And we need to choose happy, which we can't actually choose. It's a pet peeve of mine when people say that. Or we need to, think positive thoughts, think positive, be positive. It's well, actually, that's going to make you feel worse. But actually, it's leaning into the good. It's leaning into the feel-good things while acknowledging that we weren't given these emotions as human beings. We weren't given these thoughts as human beings if they didn't serve some purpose, if we weren't meant to feel them, the full spectrum of emotion, and it can be scary, especially most of us weren't taught to embrace emotion or feel emotion growing up. So, that's kind of a new school parenting thing. Now, the next generation are very lucky that they're going to have parents who acknowledge emotions in them. But for many of us, we didn't have parents who did that. So, I encourage you to find a practice, whether it's seeing a psychologist or social worker like myself, seeing a coach, doing journaling, what else is there? Doing art, listening to music, finding some way to get in touch with your emotions, move through them, understand them, and embrace some of that pain. Embrace the whole spectrum of feeling and start to notice throughout the day, throughout your week, what emotions am I feeling, and can I be feeling two at once? Am I feeling happy and angry, or happy and sad, or even happy and jealous at times? You can feel that full spectrum, and that's okay. I think it's better to be in touch with that than oblivious. And then, like I said, that pressure cooker catches up with you and you have this emotional meltdown looming in the background. So I hope that that's helpful. If you found that interesting or helpful and you'd love to learn a bit more about it, of course, get in contact and connect with me for some one-on-one sessions, or remember that I've got online self-paced courses that you can do anytime that really undoes some of this. And they're a lot cheaper and all of that than the one-on-one coaching if your budget just isn't there right now and you don't have the time to invest in yourself fully with one-on-one coaching. That's kind of the next best thing. So I definitely recommend that. I've got one on your personal growth and doing some of that, and then one on your relationships too. So, all right, it's been so good to connect. I always appreciate your presence and being here, and I'm proud of you for investing this time in yourself. And I'm so thankful that you came to listen to me, of all the things, of all the places you could be, of all the things you could be listening to. Thank you so much for taking the time out for me and for you. And if there's anything you want me to talk to, if there's anything you're like, I really want to understand this concept more, or, I'm really interested in this idea, please get in contact. I would love to help you out with that. And anyway, we will see you in the next episode of the 4Q podcast. Okay, bye for now.